Hi, everybody. This is Alex speaking. I'm back again with episode number 14, I believe, of Ales and Raphael. And as you can see, there's no Raphael yet. The reason is that we skipped a week. Last week I wasn't able to make it due to poor connection since I'm traveling. This week we're back, yet Raphael is going to be a couple of minutes late. However, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, this is me, Ales, and I'm having weekly talks with my friend Raphael about all sorts of things related to personal and professional development and best practices that helped us improve over the time, and also the struggles we are experiencing on daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, you name it. Today, we should talk a little bit about the growth, and as in personal or professional growth versus personal transformation. I wasn't myself aware of this distinction till recently. I treated both of these topics as one, and then this distinction was brought to my attention by Adam Quine, a coach that both myself and Raphael follow and work with in his programs. And we were looking into the areas of growth slash transformation in our lives. And through that, I realized that there really is a distinction that's pretty important, and it will affect or may affect your strategies when it comes to planning and executing your personal development. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna cover the difference as I see it, and as Raphael is going to join, we're going to see how it fits into our lives. If you are interested also in something else, if you are tuning in to hear about the updates on my no sugar slash no YouTube 30-day challenge, which actually just ended for me. You just stay tuned, and I'm going to tackle that as well. But let's start with the main topic. The main topic for today, as I said, is the difference between personal growth and personal transformation. There are multiple ways this could be defined. Since I mentioned Adam Quine, I'm going to put a link to his article in here, so you can actually, I'm going to put it in comments, so you can look it up. And in this article, Adam Quine is actually describing it as a difference between the area of your strength that you already know that could be expanded into further skill. That would be the area of growth. So to give you an example, a growth would be if you already those of you who watch this for a while, I like bike metaphors. So let me use a bicycle metaphor. If you know how to ride a bike, a growth in this area would be to bike faster, or to build on your endurance, or maybe skills. So, for example, if you know how to lift your front wheel when going over a curb, a growth would be honing your skills and finding the way how to lift your rear wheel as well, which, by the way, I'm not great. I'm not great at doing yet. It's kind of easier with clipless pedals, but let's stick to the metaphor. So improving your area of strength, being able to deliver faster, deliver stronger, deliver with greater impact in an area where you are already reliable to deliver. That would be a personal growth. And of course, as such, we can grow through further training, education, further practice, learning from your peers on the job, and just keep practicing what we are doing in this area. It doesn't necessarily require further reflection or insight. For the most part, we are able to grow through continuing the training the way we are used to. The issue or potential issue with this approach is that it wouldn't open a new potential for us. For example, with the analogy with biking, we may get better as bikers. However, we are not improving our skills in any other areas. And let's stick to transformation. Let's stick to transportation in here, for examples. So let's assume that there's this universe of possibilities when it comes to transportation. And I'm not tapping into these possibilities at all. I'm not using rollerblades, roller skates, ice skates, whatever are the options. I'm not using cars. I'm not walking. I'm just sticking to honing my skills when it comes to biking, growing in this area. A transformation would be in this context realizing that there are other possibilities open to me that I didn't look into at all. So it could be the aha moment when I realized that there are other ways I could actually move from A to B, and I'm going to start to explore these other areas. Of course, for those of you who are ardent bikers like myself, you understand that biking is not just about moving from A to B, but for the sake of this example, let's stick to that. So I'm gonna, since I'm traveling, I have very low tech solution in which I actually mimicked what Anam Kwan is talking about. I kind of like this idea when the area of opportunity is this 360-degree circle. You are somewhere in the center, and the strength area in this case is the area that you are able to already conquer. So in my case, it's biking. I'm pretty much able to bike, but I can still improve my skills. So I can still move outside the circle into the area of new possibilities. All of this is the untapped potential of other transportation possibilities that I didn't know about or I didn't look into. So in this case, the untapped potential would be looking into, let's say, walking. It might sound boring, but maybe I didn't try for quite a while. Walking may be a new potential for me. So going into more serious examples, of course, we might care about understanding how to look into our situation from a new point of view, and instead of keep doing what we've been already doing, looking into new opportunities to open new possibilities for ourselves. It happened to me recently that I started looking into my preferred career opportunities, the strength I have, the ways I would like to enhance my skills, and also into what I would like to be doing with myself as a professional. And of course, one way of looking at it is the area of growth. How can I become a better professional within the area where I'm currently operating? But of course, the transformation in this sense would mean looking into the entire universe of possibilities, looking into what are the other professions, what are the other options that I may have when it comes to work. It is something we all have been doing as children, I believe. So if you remember when you were 5, 6, maybe younger, maybe older, depending on the culture, I guess, when you are asked by the grown-ups, what would you like to be doing as a career? What would you like to be doing as a profession? I think I was one of the few kids in my class who didn't want to be a pirate at the time. But in this case, you are operating from the area of this 360-degree potential. You think about everything. You think about astronaut. You think about pirate maybe. You think about all sorts of profession without any limitations. Maybe you think about prince or princess. The older we get, the more we are focusing on the area of strength. So We're gonna zero in on the area that we have chosen somewhere in the past, and we're just trying to hone our skills and get better at it. And Raphael is in here, so I'm gonna add him to the stream. Hi, Raphael. You look fancy
Hello,
today, and
hello.
I haven't seen you for a while, so really good to see you again.
Likewise, I know 1 week. It feels like forever. I guess it's been 2 weeks. We missed 1 week, and that was long enough for me to convince myself that we begin at 10:30. So I was, oh, how long of a yoga practice do I have time for? I think I can squeeze in a 20-minute one, and actually, I had negative time. So anyway, I'm 20 minutes early, according to my calculations for the day. So.
So in that case, I appreciate that you joined early. That's cool. And I love the idea of negative time. So I know very little about yoga and intrigued still to learn more. But now I think you can create this negative time and more potential.
Yeah, limitless potential. So can you fill me in? Where are we? I think I caught you talking about a little bit about growth versus transformation, which is something I'm very fascinated in. And I see you posted a link to Adam's article on Medium on there.
Absolutely, I did, and I kind of plagiarized his graphics in here. So I was talking about strength area, which in my case is biking and honing my skills in biking versus considering other, to me, less attractive possibilities of locomotion. But now I kind of moved into the question of career choice as well, and I basically ended up with dreaming a little and remembering how as a child I was more open and able and willing to look into this 360 degree of potential, thinking about how I, of course, could be a pilot, an astronaut, whatever I choose, right? But the older I get, the more, let's say, convenient it is for me to just hone the one area of strength when I'm already in, and going narrower and narrower rather than exploring the wider possibilities. I think that's the disadvantage of getting any level of skill or expertise or let's say comfort in some area, because we love comfort and we want to stay there. So that's what I covered, and I promised, and now we both have to deliver, that we're going to explore how this distinction resonates with both of us, how it affects our lives, and what would be the examples from past or potentially from the present when we are facing kind of a choice, honing in what we're already doing, trying to do it better or faster, or pausing and reflecting and looking at ourselves and see if it all actually makes sense. And I'll shut up now. Time is yours.
Yeah, great. Well, this is a very interesting topic to me, and I think it would be useful if we each kind of explore where we may have had some transformation in our life. And, I've heard it argued that growth is always happening in one way or another. I'm not sure if I agree with that completely. But I like your analogy of a child kind of being open to the possibility of, various career choices, things like that, just the whole pie versus the slice. And I think that's accurate. The older we get, the more we kind of want to stay in our comfort zone. And so it's possible to grow and continue improving, like you said, becoming a better cycler, faster, more consistent, and things like that, but you're staying within your zone. Some of this is a little slippery, and I feel like we get into semantics. And, someone who isn't focused on growth and has kind of been stagnating for a while, I would argue that if they begin to look at life with a growth mindset and commit to kind of incremental improvement, that over time that leads to a sort of transformation. Although I've heard this argued, so I think there's some nuance here, and I really think that it depends on the individual. So I can only kind of look at my own experiences. If I look back at my life a decade ago, then undoubtedly there's been a huge transformation for me. I mean, I look at my life 10 years ago and I was, often depressed, kind of stagnant, watching television, smoking cigarettes. I was not very physically active. I was in a relationship that was really bad for me. And there was a slow kind of exit out of that. And ultimately for me, the big missing piece was fitness. And once I found that became a kind of path for me. And at times has bordered on obsession. And along with that came other ways to kind of examine my life and develop myself. And so when I think about transformation now, I look at some of the things that I still consider to be out of balance for myself and things that I might have considered out of possibility completely. And so that for me would be transformation. Things that might have seemed unreasonable to desire or to aspire to not long ago. The other side of that would be transformation. And it's a little bit tricky for me because I'm looking to, I want to stay grounded in the present moment, right? And so it can feel like if we're always looking to transform and to change and to grow, it can feel like we're constantly on this hamster wheel of chasing. Although I think it's completely possible to accept where we are here and have our sights set on more possibility. And I think to give another example with career. So if you're in a job you may be just somewhat happy with, continuing moving forward in that path could be growth. You could get a promotion, you could, get a raise, and you might get a bigger apartment or whatever. The transformation would be there's maybe a desire to completely make a career change and to have a complete overhaul of your lifestyle. So I think that would be like a rough example of like growth versus transformation. I don't know if that sounds accurate to you.
It does, and actually I wonder if we can even talk about transformation as an area of known. I know that in the past we discussed the distinction between these known unknowns and unknown unknowns. So I use the bike metaphors at the beginning. So let's say the known for me would be I know something can be done and I know how. So I know how to ride a bike. The known unknown is an area where I know it's possible. I just don't know how. So I don't know how to ride, how to do a wheelie, how to ride on my rear wheel only. But I've seen people doing that. I know it could be done. For transformation, I'm thinking often about the areas of unknown. I have no clue that the potential even exists, or I don't think it exists for me, and that produces these epiphanies, these moments of awakening when you realize something's possible. I wonder how was it for you, or if there was a series of events happening in your life, or if there was one moment 9.5 years ago when you just realized. How was it for you? Did you have any of those?
So when you're kind of stuck at your lowest points, you often don't see a lot of possibility for yourself, or it lives in your mind as a fantasy of some sort, but it feels very out of reach. It was definitely gradual. It was not one thing. The big step for me was to make a choice to end the relationship I was in, even though I had at the time, 2-year-old twins. And so that was a very difficult decision. There was a lot of pressure to kind of stay in it for the sake of the children. But I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the right thing for myself, my partner at the time, and the children was actually to end that relationship and to go our separate ways. And that wasn't easy. So that was a kind of big step. And I relocated at the time as well. So it was a physical change in my environment. I completely changed my environment. And then I changed some of my habits slowly. So for me, it was like, okay, now I can sit around and wallow. I can waste time watching TV, surfing the internet, whatever I'm doing, or I can kind of get serious about my health, about just getting in motion. And so that was a big thing for me, was making a commitment to change. And it wasn't completely foreign to me. I had been very active previously in my life, but there was a period where after having children, I just kind of let go of a lot of that. And so to answer your question, it wasn't like one aha moment. It was just, okay, I don't want to slip any lower than I've slipped. And I think it's time for me to pick myself up and start making progress, forward progress into a different direction. And it's been a kind of gradual but consistent movement since then. And so, if I break it down month by month, you can see growth, but there wasn't real transformation 3 months. Once you get to the 6-month period, I think there started to be like, okay, I gave up smoking cigarettes. That's a pretty big transformation. Going from sitting around to then going to the gym several times a week. I would argue that is transformation, because you're going from one type of lifestyle to another type of lifestyle. The tricky part for me with this conversation is not getting wrapped up in a kind of like verbal gymnastics or spiritual gymnastics with this. So this word means this and this means that. So I think there's some nuance here, and I certainly don't claim to be an expert in growth versus transformation. I feel like this is something I'm very curious to learn more about, and hear others' experience with this. I can only speak to my own, and I'd love to hear for yourself. I guess one example would be prior to starting, you and I did 2 mastermind classes back to back with each other. Would you say that you noticed some transformation or some growth for yourself in that 12-month period?
No, that's a good one. I think it's not right off the bat. I can't think of anything striking that would be a transformation in terms of moving into the unknown. I did. I think it was growth in the area that was very important for me, but if I'm thinking about if I'm thinking about transformational experience, yes, actually, it's a realization that that came to me when I read the book After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, about the people who reached like a sense or a moment of enlightenment, however you want to call it, this state of momentary bliss, and then they, let's say, return to the profane daily life, and they revisited the turmoil of the emotions and reality. I guess that was an aha moment through reading a book, when I realized, hey, I'm never gonna be done with learning this. I'm never gonna be done with the practice. It's not like you climb the mountain and you are on the mountaintop and then that's it. It's a continuous movement. I hesitate to say struggle, but yeah, a struggle. So transformation for me, I guess, was accepting this and not panicking, like realizing, yeah, that's how it is, and it's okay this way. I don't think that was accessible to me 2 years ago. That back then I was thinking more, yeah, I need to go, and if I'm going to proceed in the same direction for long enough, I'm going to get to the point where it's going to be easy or easier. Now I don't think that anymore.
Yeah, I relate to that. For me, it was more with certain ways of experiencing things. So I had this idea that if I could accumulate enough tools, or if I could learn to use the right tools, I could bypass certain experiences, right? Experiences that might be categorized as negative, right? Like, oh, if I figure out how to meditate, or if I fix this part of my life, then maybe I won't feel this way anymore. And there was a book that was heavily that influenced my experience heavily, which was Already Free by Bruce Tift. And the way that it influenced that was this kind of realization that there was no bypassing these experiences, but there was a way in which we could relate to them differently that would change the nature of that experience. And so it's not that we will no longer experience anxiety, depression, frustration, anger, all of those things. It's that we learn to recognize those things as appearances in consciousness that are kind of inevitable and will continue as long as we're alive, right? And so by changing the way that we relate to the experiences, we can take some of the strength and brunt out of them, right? When we can remember to release the resistance, the experience, it's almost like you can invert a negative experience into a positive one just by releasing the resistance. This is one of those things where understanding it on an intellectual level is one step. The issue is often when we need these tools the most, we can't find them, right? If you're kind of in the throes of rage or passionate exchange with your partner, or your child is behaving in a way that triggers you, or whatever it is, we kind of default to the way that we've behaved throughout our life. We're reactive. So something happens, we have a reaction, there's an emotional kind of feeling tone attached to it. And so that is something that I think only with practice can be deconditioned and desensitized. And there's a certain level of accepting responsibility for those reactions. In other words, they're coming from within us. It's not this other person, and I've said this so many times in these conversations, it's not the other person's actions that are causing us to feel this way. It's the way we're relating to the action or to the story, right? And there's science to back this kind of thing up. If you get an email that's like bad news email, right? It could be work, could be personal, doesn't matter. It's not that information that's causing the physical discomfort in your body, the anxiety, increased heart rate, all this. It's the way that you're relating to it on a physiological level too. So literally by changing your breathing patterns, you can reach a state of physical calm. Now, that doesn't mean that the bad news is gone. It's still there. You have to deal with it. It's gonna be there, but it doesn't have to affect you so powerfully on a physical level. And I felt that was important to add, because I think this is part of learning to regulate. And this is how I've learned to put a little bit of a space between the trigger and the response. If there's no space there, it's not a response, it's a reaction, right? It's like getting the, like the knee jerk, literally. You get a tap on the knee and you kick. That's a reaction. If there's a space, you have time to respond in a way that's hopefully appropriate. So for me, I would consider that a slow growth that eventually led to, I guess you could call it a transformation. For me, being able to have that space and not be thrown about by the pendulum swinging to one direction or another has been transformational in how my experience is. So, and I would argue that's probably been one of the most useful things. Again, if we can learn to access, it's like, can we find the tool when we need it?
Yeah. No, just this. I'm thinking about the way you can relate to things, and I like you mentioned emails, because that actually means I can connect the dots in my own experience there. So in the when was it actually? In the first quarter, I think it was the beginning of this year, January, February. I did some time management work with Sophie Chichi, and it was very, very insightful, especially at the time when I was trying to resolve my truckload of emails and communications and requests at work. And I was actually focusing on the area of growth. So how do I apply smart filters in there? How do I sort my stuff? How am I gonna deal with requests faster? And that would be the growth. But the way she approached it with me was much more productive, and it relates to what you just shared. So basically, she challenged me to look beyond that and to see, okay, so why, or what is it about emails, and what does the email mean? And it led me to reconsidering and opening up the questions of, we can say, prioritization, but not just that. I think the most insightful part of the work was to look into my mental approach to the work when we discovered that I'm kind of sabotaging myself by not allowing myself to feel the sense of victory, regardless how many email I'll process in a day. And it was stepping also into the physical feelings. How does it make me feel? What is the rainbow of feelings opening up when I open the email? So that's very, very true, and it's very remarkable how much we normally let ourselves affect by a series of symbols in an email, which they literally don't mean anything until you translate the text into its meaning, right? So if you were illiterate, the email would not affect you at all. So in a way, you are in charge of how it's affecting you.
Right. And it's inevitable that some things are going to affect us. If the email says you're fired, I mean, it's natural that you're going to have a strong reaction to that email, right? With some training, you can have a choice in how you then respond to that. And it's important. Well, the beautiful thing with an email is that to respond right away. In fact, it's often very useful that we don't, especially if there's an email that occasions a strong reaction in us. It's probably best to take some time, step away. Sometimes you read it again 5 hours later or the next day, and it's suddenly not as sharp as it may have felt the first time you read it. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, absolutely, I did, and I'm thinking it was, I think, Louis C.K. or other stand-up comedian kind of making fun of this short fuse approach to our communication. So some types of text messages are more damaging than others, and there should be a timeout or some special safety log that would ask you, do you really want to send this message? If you do, you need to lift this 100-pound dumbbell first and move it over there so you kind of cool down mentally. What I'm thinking, it would be actually interesting, this is just a pure speculation just for the sake of fun, if the emails were not as fast as they are now. If it really took, let's say, 5 hours before email reaches the recipient, it would probably affect our communications, not necessarily for the worse, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking, so here's something I wanted to ask you in there. It's I think some of the transformations in my life when I kind of had to rethink and recalibrate my life were initiated by external change that I didn't choose, right? So being fired would be an example of that, versus leaving a job of your own choice. And very often, and there are many examples in literature and in fiction as well, people have to transform. That's the heroic epic. You have to transform because of external circumstances change for the worse. What would be the blend of these experiences in your life that you can recall? Was the transformation initiated for you mostly by being shaken from the outside, or was it you being able to, let's say, look at your life from different perspective without the rupture of everything?
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of more internal, a deep yearning for a different experience in life, for more freedom, financial freedom, freedom with my time, the ability to choose how I'm using my time, what I'm going to do when I wake up that day. And there was a lot of ruminating, especially before I had a mindfulness practice, because I was often, like most people, the default is like being lost in thought and not even being aware that you're thinking, right? You're just completely identified with the story. And it's much like being in a movie theater and say it's a good movie and you've suspended disbelief. You're like in it, right? You're watching the character and you've bought it. And then you step out and it's like, oh yeah, that was a movie. Something similar happens when we start to focus our attention in that way, and we can recognize when we've been lost in thought. And it doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to be, completely mindful all the time. But back to, I've mentioned this before, as Joseph Goldstein puts it, recognitions per minute. Like, how often do you wake up from the dream, or how often do you realize that you've been identified with thought for some time, and then clearly see, like, okay, I was kind of lost in some thought loops there. I was really spinning the story, very tightly winding myself up over it. And that moment of realization is really empowering, because then you have this option and you have this recognition, oh, this is just a thought that I've been really identifying with. And often, those thoughts aren't useful. In fact, they can be quite unuseful and even damaging, right? We're often stuck on something that we said or did. Oh man, I really don't like how I showed up at that meeting. I said something really stupid, and I bet everybody's thinking about that right now. Well, chances are nobody's thinking about that right now. Or concern over if this thing that I'm worried about going wrong goes wrong, it's really going to be shitty for my life down the line. And often that thing never comes. And so it's not that we shouldn't plan or that we shouldn't analyze our past performances and find ways that we can do better next time. But often it's not very useful to stay kind of wrapped up in that this is how it went and this is how it needs to be. And there's not a lot of room for being here and focused on what's in front of us when we're in that kind of, past or future state. And so I think I danced around the question, but for me, it was very much driven by, so there was a part of me that saw greater possibility. And of course, that was accompanied by tremendous self-doubt and self-limiting beliefs. And a lot of those are still there. When I think about the greater possibility now, all that stuff still comes up, which is exactly why we work with a coach, right? For one, it helps us stay connected to possibility, but also it helps us see the stuff that we don't see. You can be the most brilliant person in the world, and you're still not going to, there's still going to be a lot that you miss, a lot that you can't see for yourself. And so putting this stuff on the table and being able to have a soundboard and being able to have somebody else look with you together can be very helpful. That doesn't mean they're going to know what's best for you or that it'll even be useful to you, but it's a good place to start.
I'm wondering if what you described is really not like a rupture in terms of a sudden crisis. Let's say it may have been a slow downfall or decay when you realized at some point that something's not right. And I think I had the similar experience, but I actually would call it externally initiated. So when I let's say it is around 10 years ago, I think I was I was working as a freelance teacher on multiple schools, and one by one I was losing the contracts. So I was getting less and less classes, and it affected me financially in a way that I had to find a different job, and I was unable to find the one that I would consider adequate. That was very stressful, and it made me question my self-worth and a lot of things. So in a way, I felt this was kind of downward spiral, and hitting the bottom, or feeling that I did, made me think about finding other ways. The reason I'm sharing this is I'm asking myself a question. In your situation, or in my situation, I feel things are going okay for me, or very good actually. I know things are going fairly okay for you, despite some struggles you're facing. I don't think you feel out of control now. What do you think is the possibility for us, or for people who are mid-range? I'm pretty okay, so why try harder? I think it's much harder speaking for myself, I think it's much harder for me to be shaken out of the current status quo, from the growth idea. Whatever I have now plus 10% is my goal. Do you feel that for yourself, or and if you do, how do you combat that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And just to touch real briefly on the previous situation that I was describing, I kind of considered it like a slow motion emergency. It wasn't like I woke up one day and was like, oh, my life is shit and I have to do something about it. It was like, I knew for a long time that it was not sustainable, that I was going to stay miserable if I didn't make some drastic changes. And so that, and I think a lot of people find themselves in this position where they know, and it could be a relationship, a job, just a bunch of bad habits, where they know that's not really what they want for themselves, but they feel kind of powerless in making a change for that. So back to your question about status quo and how do you deal with that? So what you're describing is being comfortable. And I think that is when we should do a whole episode on that topic of comfort. I'm very weary when things get too comfortable for myself. And I think this really goes back to asking yourself the right questions. So taking a look at your whole life from a macro perspective and going like, what's in balance? Like, let's look at your relationships with your friends, your family, your spouse, whatever, career, health. These are the obvious things, right? And then there's like more nuanced stuff, like how active am I socially? Am I happy with that? Am I satisfied with that? Do I want more? What's stopping me? So those are all good questions to start with, because then they give us a little bit of a path of like, oh, I see I'm pretty satisfied with this part of my life. I see a lot of room for growth in this area of my life. And so the answers to those questions are what motivates me to continue growing. And I see a lot of value for myself in just learning to be less comfortable. And I think that's kind of what you commit to when you do one of these masterminds or programs like the ones that we've done in the past and the ones that we'll be doing starting next month as well, right? You're kind of pre-committing to being uncomfortable. You know that there are going to be a lot of things that come up that are very confronting for you. You're going to run up against all the stuff that's gotten in the way previously, and yet you see value in it, and you see there's something there that's making you commit to that. And it's not a small commitment. It's a huge time obligation. It's a huge financial obligation. And it creates a certain level of structure in your life. And again, it's a commitment. And so you must have had some questions come up that led you to make that decision, right? To join the two previous groups and the one that we're joining again. And there are probably parts of your life that you looked at that you see more room for. I don't want to use the word improvement, but I think growth is a very appropriate word for this. And I look forward to discussing this one with Adam more, because I brought it up a little bit. This, like, can you get to transformation without growth? Like, don't you need some steady growth before you're all of a sudden transformed? And so again, I don't want to get into some verbal gymnastics with this one. So yeah, I think those are the questions to ask. That's the reason why, because you can be perfectly comfortable and you might not have a good reason for yourself to want to do more. Oh, I like my house. I like my job. I'm comfortable. I like my level of how active I am. I'm fine. I don't really want to change that. Fine. It's not my job to tell other people what they should desire in their life. For myself, I feel like that same deep yearning that before was like to get out of a bad situation. Now I consider myself in a very good situation. For me now, it's about continuing to build resilience, to build security. So I'm comfortable right now financially, but there's still a lot of uncertainty about the future. And so there's a lot of motivation on that level to continue improving my financial situation. So there's security for my family, to continue improving my health so that I have a buffer, right? The stronger and healthier I am, the more likely I am to be able to recover from an injury or an illness. So there are a lot of kind of rational reasons for me to continue to grow. If I have a more robust social network, it will create more opportunities, and it will just create more connection and intimacy in my life, which we know the data say that it's as important as the air that we breathe or the food that we eat to have robust and healthy social network. So there are very rational reasons for me to continue to improve my conditions on all fronts of my life. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Now, when we come up against the stuff that gets in the way, that's when I feel like the self-criticism kicks in and goes, do you really need to grow in this area? Isn't it good enough? Like, don't you want to just leave it alone? Do you really need to be able to lift more weight? Do you really need another group? Do you really need another career? These questions come up. And I don't think there's a real clear answer, because need is a very strong word. It's like, will you be fine without them? Sure. I mean, in the country I live in, even a lot of the homeless population is fine. So it's like, what do you want to compare to, and what's important to you? And I think that is, for me, I find that I need to take inventory of my life on a regular basis so I can keep repeating these questions. Because sometimes you take on something and realize, you know what, I don't think it's really serving me or really worth the time, and I need to pivot here. I need to do something a little differently. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does answer the question when it comes to the growth and transformation, as you said before. So you can grow in certain area, and you can still tap into potential that is, as I see, related to it somehow. It's not exactly it, but it's there. I'm thinking if there's a possibility to have transformation without growth, as you said. So if growth in traditional sense means improving your condition, then transformation may stem from the lack of growth, or even like diminishing potential in this area. I just recently looked into the book of Job, and which is very. I'm not religious, but the story of the biblical story of Job, who's being kind of being tried by well, I would say by God, or by the devil, however you want to see it, when he has a lot of possessions and family and everything, and he's not experiencing growth, right? The things are being taken away, and I've seen that in the past. I've seen that as like a horrible picture of how God, the Old Testament God, is not loving. Now I looked at it as a transformation of Job, who is able to absorb the experience and relate to the God, if you will, or to the new circumstances, as you said earlier, by taking control over his own reaction, or kind of mastering the way he is able to do that. And the reason I'm saying this is I also see it a little bit as the story of aging gracefully. Like you will not be able to do as many push-ups as you are today 50 years from now. How do you react to that as a person, as a human being, keeping your posture in the metaphorical way, and staying composed? That, I think, would be a transformation, realizing that even with diminishing strength in some areas, literally or figuratively, you can stay true to what is important.
Yeah, I like that. And if you look at some of the elders that we have access to, and you can find so many wonderful people speeches and debates about this kind of thing, it's clear that there's a component of acceptance, and there's a direct correlation between that acceptance and your level of joy or suffering that you feel. And yeah, I mean, if you're loathing the inevitable loss of your strength over the years, you're probably going to be miserable. But if you are doing something to mitigate that and go, oh, I'm aware that after a certain age, you're going to lose X amount percentage of muscle mass every year by default. So I have to do this amount of work just to maintain. And if I want to do more than maintain, I need to do a little bit more than that. And how important is that to me? I mean, there are people that are quadriplegics that have fully accepted their fate in life and are not suffering more or less than someone who is fully physically capable. So I think the important thing to master is your mind, right? I've heard the quote, no one can harm you more than your own mind untrained. And I think that is a very true statement. I think that we suffer much more in imagination than in reality. And this goes back to the same thing of, kind of dwelling in the past or being too focused on the future. And I'm in no way saying that you should not plan for your future. That's why we're doing this thing. If I thought I was going to die tomorrow or next week, I might not go as intensely with like physical stuff, right? There are a lot of other important things that a lot of things that can enrich my experience. But I like to assume, or I like to believe, that hopefully I have a few decades of life ahead of me, and that I have a better chance of doing well physically during that time if I take good care of myself. And so it's like you're making an investment in yourself in your future self. At least that's how it occurs to me. That being said, there is a sweetness to be found in the action itself too. And I think that that's really a way to develop consistency. If you're only working because you want to get to an end, right? You're working because, I'm going to keep working at this project because I want the money that comes from it. Or I'm going to keep working out because I want to be really strong and healthy later. There's no joy to be had now. And it's been proven that intermittent rewards are actually more effective at consistent dopamine. In other words, if we don't know when we're getting the reward, if we have kind of sporadic payments, and the casinos have figured this out, right? This is why people continue to put their money into slot machines, even though we all know the house always wins. But the behavioral scientists have figured this out, and they understand intermittent rewards. And I think this still is kind of in the ballpark of our point. You can do things with knowing that they are going to be beneficial in the long term, but you can learn to do them for the sake of doing them now. In other words, there's a Buddhist term. You are entitled to the action, never its fruits.
Didn't know that one. Okay. No, that's. Now I'm gonna have to think about this. I didn't know this one. Anyway, Raphael, it was a pleasure to talk to you again. And
likewise, Ales.
I think we can talk about that actually. You mentioned that we should talk about comfort. I think one potential topic for next week might be this. How to find the level of comfort in the action, and not waiting for the fruits of it.
Sure,
something like
sure.
that.
Or yeah, or what is the cost of being comfortable and running to comfort? Every time we unlock that device, there's a desire to comfort ourselves momentarily, right? And you see this happening in groups frequently. So yeah, I'd be happy to cover that topic.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. Thanks to whoever was watching us. And if you only just joined, you can, of course, watch the recording. This was episode 14 already of our weekly talks with me and my good friend Raphael. We'll be back 1 week from now, same time, same channels, which is currently Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So thanks for joining. Have a lovely rest of the day and week.
Thanks, everyone.